Thanks for
Hi,
joining me, Keith, and congratulations on this latest movie of yours.
thank you.
Yeah, I thought it was great. I spoke to Dermot recently about the movie
Yeah,
as well,
yeah,
and he was saying how this was sort of a reunion because the two of you had worked together previously on another film.
Family Tree. Yes, we had a good time on that one. Yeah,
Yeah, now here you are. So, and I know there's some other, longtime actors in the mix on Laws of Man, Harvey
yes,
Keitel, Forey, and the list
yep.
goes on. So I was curious what the vibe was like on set of this, with this neat little ensemble, this indie movie, seeing some familiar faces. I mean, what was the
Well,
ex
the vibe for me was it was just everybody was there having fun, and there was great enthusiasm and a great sort of sense of collaboration and understanding that we were all attempting something that was rather ambitious. In terms of telling this story, a period story, and with with the settings attendant to that, particularly the missile silo at the climax of the film. I think I think we were all feeling pretty enthusiastic about what we were attempting, and realizing that we all had to work together as efficiently as possible to realize Phil's vision.
Yeah, that's great. Yeah, and yeah, it really all builds to that wonderful climax. And yeah, and, I knew in advance that you were in this movie. And finally, you make your grand entrance sort of later in the movie.
Yes.
Just kind of waiting and waiting, and then finally there you are. Could you sort of talk about how your character Galen sort of fits into the narrative, and maybe what about him sort of excited you for joining this project?
Well, I felt as though, the central villain in the piece is Dermot.
Right.
And so the focus is on the contention between him and the good guys. Um, and then to discover that there is actually an arch villain who might be um, uh, more dangerous in terms of the world itself than Dermot's character was. And Dermot was he was dangerous in terms of what he represented and his personal sort of goals. But when Galen shows up and you discover that, oh, there's a lot more going on here than we thought, and that was a fun role to have to play.
Yeah. Yeah, that's great. Yeah, it sounds like it. Um, I also wanted to ask, it's been, what is it now? About 40 years since your movie Choose Me has been released.
Yes.
I hear it's coming to the Criterion collection.
Yes, the Criterion Collection has adopted another of our orphans.
Yeah.
Yeah, we were delighted to hear that, and Alan and I both went in and spoke on camera for the
Right.
extras and stuff. That was really fun, and I'm happy to know that the Criterion has adopted us, and people will have another chance to revisit that.
Yeah, that's great. I was going to ask, Alan Rudolph what it was like, decades later, if there's anything recall from working with him on such a wonderful movie.
Well, Alan and I mean, the first time we worked together really was on Nashville, and he was the second AD. And
Oh,
and it was during the filming of Nashville that he started to put together, these films, the beginning of his life as a director. The first of them being Welcome to LA. And then when we did Choose Me, he had made several films in between Welcome and Choose Me. And then when we finally got to make Choose Me, that was a particularly sweet moment because we were turned loose to do something based on this very small budget that Alan was given. And it's interesting how and it's not unlike what Phil Blattenberger and everybody did here, when you endeavor to do something and you have very limited resources with which to accomplish what you're setting out to do, then invention becomes really important.
Right.
And that was certainly the case on Choose Me. I mean, Shep Gordon came to Alan after Teddy Pendergrass's horrible accident, and they were trying to figure out a way to lift Teddy's spirits, and it turned out that there was this recording that he had made, and Alan was given the record and said, "Can you think of a movie about this?" And then Alan came to New York. I was on Broadway at the time doing Foxfire with Hume Cronin and Jessica Tandy, and we went out to dinner afterwards. And he said, "So here's the deal: we're going to make this movie, and I want you to be in it, and I'm going to write it. What do you want to play?" And I said, "Well, can you write me a role where you let me do everything that no one will let me do up till now?" And that was what Alan came up with, was that role in that movie. And then of course the cast that we had around us and everybody who joined in. I mean, it was magical. And I think we shot that in 23 days or something. Um, you
Wow.
know, uh, yeah, there was no money. There was no we were just trying to tell the best story we knew how to tell at the time with the resources that we had, which were minimal. And the result, I think, because of Alan, what comes out of his brain, I think the results are just, I think they've stood the test of time. I think it works even better now than it did when it came out.
Yeah.
And one of the things I learned that I appreciate about Alan and the things that we've done since is I just love the way he sees people. I love the way he sees kind of the absurdities of how we are with one another and what we think is important and what turns out to actually be important and sort of the absurd humor behind that. He has a lot in common with Kurt Vonnegut, I think, in terms of how Alan looks at the world. And both of us were great fans of Vonnegut's, and he made Breakfast of Champions into a film.
Right.
So I think I was one of the things I learned early on about Alan, and it's one of the reasons we have such a friendship. We're still close.
Yeah. Well, that's wonderful to hear. Yeah. And I'm a Vonnegut fan as well. So
Yeah.
yeah, that's great. And you mentioned Nashville. It's now 50 years since that
Yes.
terrific
Yep.
movie came out when you won your Oscar for Best Original Song. Congratulations on that.
Thank you.
All these years later. That's wonderful. I was curious if you keep up with the Oscars. I know the nominations came out recently, and if you ever every year, once in a while, peek at the nominations for Best Original Song, if you ever have thoughts on them, if you ever try to predict them or anything like that.
You know what? To be perfectly honest, I haven't paid that close attention to it. Um,
Yeah.
um, it's an interesting process. I mean, I deeply appreciate the recognition I got for what I did in that movie and how it was received, and the fact that I got to record it, that it got heard on the radio, that it was a hit. I'm greatly appreciative of that whole process. And at the same time, I'm acutely aware of the fact that the Academy Awards are one of the greatest sales pitches ever invented. This is all about promoting a business. And there is a great deal of excitement to it. Everybody loves winning. Everybody who doesn't win will say, well, it's meaningless because it's all blah, blah, blah. And I remember my father once saying about the Oscars, well, how do you give an award for a performance unless everyone plays the same part? So there is that.
A good,
Oftentimes
yeah,
one is winning the Oscar for having been good and having been given a great role to be good in.
yeah,
So, there is you sort of look at it with a bit of a jaundiced eye, and at the same time, it's a great night and it's an exciting night, and every once in a while there will be something that breaks through or breaks out, that gets recognized, and everyone agrees that the recognition is deserved and that the approval is worthy. But in terms of keeping my eye on who's getting nominated for what at any given point, particularly in the music world, I haven't paid that close attention. But my hat's off to whoever gets there and whoever wins. It's really fun.
yeah, yeah. No, of course, you had to ask.
Yeah.
That's an interesting point your father makes. So
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah. I'm gonna remember that. I also wanted to ask, I loved your role in the TV show Dexter, and it's hard to
Yeah.
believe that show is still going with the spin-offs and the prequel series that just
Yeah,
came.
it's kind of interesting, isn't it? How
Yeah.
it's having sort of a second life. It's yeah.
I was curious if you keep up with the show, if you ever like when you see the new spin-offs come out, if you're ever tempted, if you're ever like, oh, I'd be interested in, revisiting that whole TV universe in some capacity, or is it just sort of, been there, done
Well,
that?
it's interesting that you ask. It's not so much been there, done that, as the fact that, my wife and I, we have a 6-year-old boy. She gave birth back in December of 2018,
Oh,
and
congratulations.
so that is our. I see a lot of kids shows.
Yeah.
I'm not so much up on the adult world of entertainment as I am on what he likes to watch. And that's, if we're watching something, it's usually something that's one of his favorites. I can tell you, I haven't seen Moana 2 yet, but I'm a big fan of Moana. We've seen it a number of times. It's one of my favorites. But in terms of the life of Dexter at this point, I mean, they killed me. It's like, I can't,
Right.
I don't have any hope of returning
Yeah, that's true. Good.
unless they brought me back as a ghost. And I know there are several people that they brought back as ghosts, I think.
Right.
Am I right about that?
I I think so. Or like,
Yeah.
there are always the flashbacks and
Yeah,
stuff.
there are people who are sort of present in other people's minds or something. And then,
Right, right, right.
I'm not sure that they could make any sense of doing that with Lundy. It's probably a dead issue.
But yeah, it was a great performance. And I
Thank you.
have a daughter who's almost 2, so I
Oh,
understand.
well, then you know. Yeah. Good luck, by the way. As she gets 2, 3, 4, maybe we can talk again in a few years and you can
Right.
tell me what you've seen lately.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. I can't wait. Yeah, can't wait. All right. Well, great. Well, thank you, Keith. That's all the time I have, but it was a pleasure chatting with you, and congratulations again on this latest movie of yours.
Thank you. Thank you for the time. Appreciate it.